Hi everyone. I'm just going to make a short video here about how to use Audacity to check your lip slurs, to make sure that they're really full lip slurs and that you're not breaking the air in between the slur, pulsing the air, or using the tongue. So I'll be kind of going back and forth here between what I'm doing and what I'm doing on the computer. So the first thing you want to have is you want to have the most recent version of Audacity. And on my Mac it looks something like this, and you want to make sure that your mic's working, so I like to click and make sure that my monitor is actually working. I'm just using the built-in microphone today. I'm not going to do anything fancy, and I'm actually going to turn that microphone down just a little bit so we can actually see this waveform as we start to look at it. So the first thing that I'll do is I'll just play a really simple lip slur on the trombone, and we'll check to be sure that I've got a good waveform. So I'm not going to overload my microphone, so I hit record. Yeah. So if we take a look here on Audacity, we've got pretty good waveform all the way through that. There's core sound. There's no breaks to the core sound. You can actually see in between each note where there's kind of the pitch bend, and there is kind of like the less kind of extraneous sound outside of those bends, but we still for the most part have core sound. And that core sound is the air moving past the lips, keeping everything moving. If we try that again, we can actually get more core sound for you. Yeah. So if you check that, we've actually got even more core sound there. So there's a few ways of checking this. I think the most important thing that I want to point out is what's happening when this is not actually working for a player. So here's an air pulse and what it looks like. If we check the sound wave, you'll notice that we don't have continuous sound all the way. There's these big breaks in sound. We have a little bit of core in there still, but even there's kind of a break. And that's something we want to watch for. If that's happening, that means that you're pulsing the air. And pulsing the air just leads us to really depend on the chops, in part, to make the lip slur happen. And also, it's messing with the air column. And the more we mess with the air column, the more likely it is that we'll frack something or just not hit a note. So that's air pulsing. Now here's if I'm using the tongue just lightly to kind of assist my slur. And even lighter tongue. I find it really hard to play like that anymore. But if we look at the screenshot here, this is what we have going on. So that's a lot of tongue, okay? And then over here, this is even the lighter tongue. There's still just a lot of diffusion in the sound wave. So again, what we're going for when we play this on the trombone, if you're working on lip slurs, is this sort of look. If we look at it, yes, there is some difference. Yes, you can tell when I'm moving from note to note and what notes rang and had a lot of overtones to them and what notes didn't. But for the most part, we've got consistent sound going all the way through there. Just to show you what it looks like if you're using your articulation, this is a good marcato articulation. So if we check it, you're going to notice a couple of things here. I guess I played it a little louder. That's interesting. So you can definitely see where I'm articulating, but just like the lip slur over here on the left-hand side, The marcato stuff, I have continuous sound the whole time, even when I'm articulating. Even here, where I used a really big, hard articulation on the last note, there's still sound going past the lips. And that's really important. That's what we're going for. So a couple ways of checking this. You can, of course, always check it on the trombone like that. But Mouthpiece is a really good way to check this. Here's what it looks like on the Mouthpiece. Showing my decibels there. So, we've got a pretty good air column, all the way through that. It's pretty important. Now what I'd like to do is show you what this is going to look like if I'm pulsing the air on the Mouthpiece. So you notice that we have a much different waveform. I can actually move in on this just a little bit. We actually lose a lot of the sound as we're going through there. So if I move back out and we compare that to, say, what we really want to go for. So this is our waveform for our sound that's consistent. They're really different. And then finally, I'll record you a version that's with the articulation, marcato articulation. Again, we come back over here. You can see that we're stopping the air, we're bumping the air with the articulation over here on the right. This is our lip slur, and this is our pulse. But there's still air, there's still continuous sound all the way through, even on the marcato. You can do the same thing with your cutaway mouthpiece. This works out pretty well. It's pretty obvious when things aren't working quite right. Just take your cutaway, and we'll do the same thing. First I'll do the good lip slur, then I'll articulate, and then I'll do the good lip slur, I'll do the pulsing lip slur, and then I'll articulate, so you can see the differences. Over here and I back out just a little bit so you can see all these at the same time. This is my lip slur using consistent air all the way through. This is my pulsing lip slur, and then this is my marcato articulated slur. So again, there's lots of ways of checking in on this, but this is just a visual way of really seeing what's going on. Now what's usually really difficult for all of us is when we start to move into wider lip slurs or larger intervals. And that's what I've been working on with a number of students lately. So let's take this Remington lip slur, for example, and we're going to record it and see if there's any inconsistencies with how I'm using my air in the lip slur. To Audacity, we can actually see a couple of interesting things. So this is a lip slur. Clearly I ran out of air at the end, so that's something that's really interesting. There's a pretty big taper. You can also tell that as I continued through the lip slur, again, this is another indication that I'm running out of air. My transfer from note to note, my actual lip slur, the bend, got kind of sloppy right there at the end. I've got two places that I kind of need to work on. So that's interesting. You can check that out. If you're having a lot of trouble with that lip slur, you'll notice that you end up with pretty big gaps. If we look at that, that was kind of extreme, but we've definitely got individual notes. There's not a bend in between. There's actually the stop of sound in a few places there. And the other thing that you'll notice is that the notes really balloon. What I mean by balloon is there's definitely a huge taper off of each note. Big taper, big taper, big taper, big taper. And that ballooning function can really be detrimental to playing eventually. For one thing, it's really hard to play with consistent dynamics if you're ballooning the notes. The second thing is, if you're ballooning the notes, that means that you have a tendency to A, pulse the air, and B, probably over articulate each note. So then you're going to end up with fracks, inconsistent runs, leaps, larger intervals that are not consistent. So again, these are just some ideas about how to practice some of these things and actually see a visual aid for how you want to do it. Audacity is a free download. Just go to audacity.com and you can follow the instructions there. I think this is a pretty simple way of really seeing what you're doing. Now, I don't spend all my time just watching this as I'm doing lip slurs. What I like to do is I like to do lip slurs and I like to listen back at half speed and see if I've really executed what I wanted to execute. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm just going to show you that really quick. I'm going to use Audacity, I'm going to record, and then I'm going to listen back at half speed and see what we can actually find. Okay, so I've got my lip slur here, and actually if you want to listen at a different speed, your playback speed's over here, and it shows up different places in the toolbar with different versions, but this is what we can do. So we can actually go down, let's just go down to like, right about here. This is almost half. Okay, and then we're going to hit play. So when we go back and listen to that, there's a few things that become very evident. There's definitely a bend between the pitches. But the other thing, that's a good thing. Okay, I think it's really good to have a bend. You're either pulling yourself out of one partial and pushing yourself into the next, or pushing yourself out of a partial and pulling into another partial, depending on which way you're going and how you think about it. But the thing that's not good about this is there's definitely a pop into some of the upper partials. If we listen to it again, especially that one, it really allowed it to pop. So I'm going to try it one more time and just see if I can't get it to smooth out a little bit when I go back and listen at half speed. So that time there were also some inconsistencies, but I want to just show you right here from the middle to the end, playing back at half speed. It becomes very evident that I'm actually moving into the new partial, up into the new partial or down into the new partial. And I think that's a really important thing to be able to do. So again, these are just some ideas about how to use Audacity as a visual organizer for your practice. I don't recommend doing this every day, but I do think it's a good thing to do and check in once a week. And it's a great summer project because you can really spend some time checking in on that stuff. I would start with really simple lip slurs, and then eventually you can move into some of your lip slur melodies by Brad Edwards, or some of your lip slur, the actual lip slur exercises from the Brad Edwards book as well. My recommendation is also work into some of the range building lip slurs from Remington, and maybe even take a look at some of the Jim Nova range building exercises and see what your wavelengths really look like and if you're actually getting in and out of partials efficiently. Again, this is just, in my opinion, the most efficient way to play the trombone. Most people seem to agree with this, and there's lots of information out there about waveform analysis and trombone playing. I'll post a couple of links to that with this post so that everybody can check those out as well. All right, happy practicing.